Hey, welcome back everybody. All right, so here are the updates as of today. So first, we're about 4 days from our pack out date, the date where we pack up all the stuff that we're gonna ship back to the United States. And we've got a room set aside, everything's going well. I mean, you saw the chaos of that just a few videos ago. But we're on schedule to have that team come and pick up our stuff, get everything labeled, packaged, and put into a nice air freight package, a nice air freight box, and then sent to the United States. From there, we're living off of only what we can carry in basically 40 kilos each in terms of carry-on baggage. Now, because we still don't know where we're going, we couldn't count on carrying that much weight each. So what we had to do was decide exactly what we wanted to carry person by person as a minimum weight. So what we've done as a family is we've basically put about 15 kilos of weight for Jihi and I, and then we've given the kids about 2.5 kilos each that they can carry. So then our minimum packing that we need for a family is essentially just what we need to survive for 7 days. So 7 days worth of clothes, 7 days worth of essential books. If there's diapers that are going to be coming with us, the baby's so close to potty training, we might not need diapers when we move. But the point is that we're carrying very, very little. So we're sending back about 85% of everything that we have here, specifically so that we can be very, very flexible, very fluid in whatever we do next. I talk about the importance of travel, the importance of movement, the importance of traveling light, packing minimally. I do a lot of this in the blog. If you haven't seen that yet, if you haven't listened to the podcast, for those of you who've been following me for a while, I'm sure none of you are surprised. But pack out is this Sunday. So how does that pair up with where we're going next? 4 of the 5 places that we were looking at going next have announced new states of emergency because of an increase in coronavirus cases. So while we still continue to see a flattening of the curve worldwide, while we still continue to see businesses and governments talk about getting the economy back on track, we also see a slow increase in cases in countries that allow for travel. Now, that shouldn't be surprising, but I understand why governments feel like they have to do whatever they have to do to keep their people safe. The challenge here is that for people like me who want to contribute to a country's national economy or who want to continue doing business, we are kind of disincentivized to be able to go anywhere because we either can't get in or we can't get a visa to get in, or once we get in, there's no telling what's going to happen on the other end. Are we going to get turned away at the airport and sent right back on the next flight going back in the opposite direction? Are we going to get quarantined for 14 days or more? In the Philippines, there are actually reports of quarantine that's lasting up to 3 months. There's no scientific evidence to back why that would happen, but that national government has chosen that depending on who you are and where you're coming from, you'll be quarantined anywhere from 21 days to 90 days. And that's a very difficult pill to swallow if you're looking at trying to travel somewhere. So the 4 of the 5 places that we knew we could go as a family of 4 with our nanny have all announced states of emergency. So we're in kind of a tough place there. That's forced us to have basically a plan A with contingencies and a plan B with contingencies. And that's the main reason I wanted to talk to you today. Our plan A with contingencies essentially looks like either we all go somewhere, which we won't know until basically the last minute, but we all get to go somewhere that allows all of us in because something changes in the next 30 days, or we all go somewhere intentionally to basically wait for another 30 days. There's lots of countries that will give 30-day visas to Filipinos, 16, 15, 21 days to Filipinos so we can keep our nanny with us. And then of US citizens, there's lots of countries where we can go for up to 90 days, 60 days, 120 days. That's less of an issue. The border has to be open. That's a big challenge. And the UAE has to fly to that country. That's a second big challenge. So plan A is basically a whole string of contingencies based around this idea of the 5 of us staying together. Plan B splits us up. So in plan B, we either send the family of 4, me, Jihi, and the kids, onto a forward destination where we're allowed to go for an extended period of time, and then we send our nanny to a different location where she's allowed to go for an extended period of time. So for example, if she's allowed to go back home to the Philippines, but we would be on a 3-month quarantine in the Philippines, then it makes sense for us to fly onward to a place like, say, Spain or Italy, where we're allowed to go now for 120 days, and then we send her back to the Philippines, and then 120 days later, we all reunite in a country that's currently closed, but that we can go to later on. Now, as you can see, the logistics are all very complicated. and the logistics are getting complicated. Now, when I made my original travel predictions, I talked about travel being cheap, and I talked about businesses having the advantage. I talked about consumers having the advantage over businesses. But what I'm learning now is that I did not quite predict how countries would react. I assumed that countries would follow best health practices of what they've done in the past to deal with previous pandemics. But what we're seeing instead is that national leaders are totally confused, totally lost as to how to handle this particular virus. Even though they have reports coming from healthcare officials and the World Health Organization, multiple people have laid out strategies for how to control the spread. But still, with all of the lockdown measures, with all of the gloves and the mask policies, with the fact that borders are still closed, government leaders are not looking at how to minimize or limit the spread. They're still thinking that somehow they're going to eradicate this thing. That's the challenge. So I never anticipated that governments would essentially do something that is self-destructive. They are destroying their own countries. Now, in the United States, state by state, we're seeing some states do really clever things to get the economy up and running. Because as long as you have an economy, then people have a livelihood. If people have a livelihood, then everything is possible, because you can keep people can pay for medicine, they can pay for face masks, they can maintain a healthy lifestyle that allows their immune system to strengthen and be at the strongest point, all while you also have a parallel stream of vaccine development and everything else going on. But when economies start to fail, then it's just a matter of time. Then you have to gamble on how long before people become sick because they can't get to certain produce, because that produce can't be picked by farmers in fields because people aren't working in that state or in that country. That's a real issue. That's a real challenge. And what we're seeing is that in the United States, state by state, people are doing different things. Governors are doing a different thing. And of course, the national overarching administration is doing something different from some of the states. But you don't see that happen in other countries, because very few countries are shaped like the United States. What one leadership administration decides is the policy for the entire country. So if you want to go to Azerbaijan and they decide that nobody can get in and nobody can get out, then nobody can get in and nobody can get out. There are even countries that are not letting diplomats of their own country back in. And this is, we're 60 days, 90 days into the major part of coronavirus. So it's really interesting to see how all of this is playing out. It's interesting to see where my predictions have been right and where my predictions have been off the mark. And it's been an interesting experience to sit here looking at airplane tickets. I know for a fact that I can fly from Chicago to Tampa for less than $30. That's crazy to me. That is something that I want you to know about. I want to be able to take advantage of that kind of inexpensive travel. I can fly my entire family from Chicago to Tampa for like $150 with carry-on bags. That's just insane. I can get almost anywhere in Southeast Asia, from Bangkok to Cambodia. I can get from Brunei to Bangalore for just a few $100, whereas normally that flight costs almost $1,000. Travel everywhere is really inexpensive because the businesses want to make money, but the governments are holding them back. They're blocking their borders. And that's something we're gonna have to figure out. But that's the way it's impacting us. That's why we are stuck in this weird place where we are literally putting 85% of our stuff onto an airplane to fly back to the United States in about 3 days. And we're gonna have to figure out what we're doing in the next 30 days, even though we're only carrying 7 days worth of clothing each. So there's gonna be a lot of washing and a lot of drying and a lot of short trips to the grocery store, but we're gonna figure this thing out. Now, in other news, we also are getting some very interesting intelligence contract opportunities that are coming. The United States has all sorts of opportunity that keeps coming at us. Some of those are very interesting. Some of those sound really, really appealing. There's also some coming out of Europe. There's also some coming out of Eurasia, coming down from the Australia, New Zealand side of the world. Now, if you're keeping up with what's open and what's closed, Australia and New Zealand are very difficult to get into unless you're an Australian or New Zealand passport holder. Europe is wide open. Multiple countries in Europe are already putting incentives in place to bring people into Europe. And then, of course, the United States is in a weird sort of limbo where it's good if you're an American, it's not so good if you're not an American. Plus, even if you are even if you're a nationality that has favorable immigration laws in the US traditionally, immigration laws are changing and it's even more difficult to get into the United States. So we'll have to decide what we're gonna do, but I wanted to give you a very long and complete update as to where we are now. And I'll send you another message soon and show you when all of our stuff is finalized and when I can, if you want to see exactly how much stuff we're sending back and exactly how much stuff we plan on living with. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thanks for sticking with me for this long video, and more to come.